Stop. What happened to you was not an accident, not bad luck, and definitely not a coincidence. The attempted sabotage that was supposed to bury your plans, that was supposed to silence your voice and stain your name in front of everyone. It failed. And it failed in a way that cannot be hidden. What was meant to be your public ruin has actually become the stage where the truth was revealed without you having to say a single word. Those who plotted your downfall, who drew up every detail so you would lose your footing, are now watching their own plan crumble before their eyes. They didn't just fail, they tripped over the very trap they dug for you. You've come here because you feel that something has shifted in the air, a change in weight that you can't explain to anyone, but that you feel in every fiber of your being. Before we go on, I need you to understand the covenant of our time together today. By the end of this transmission, you will recognize the 5 clear signs that show that the persecution you faced was actually a process of invisible refinement. You will understand why the isolation you experienced recently was not abandonment, but necessary protection, so you wouldn't be hit by what was being orchestrated against you. And before our time ends, I am going to declare something about your journey that will explain exactly why you are still standing, stronger than on the day they decided you should fall. You've been feeling an exhaustion that doesn't come from work, but from the soul. You've been going through cycles of forced isolation where the people around you seem distant, as if there were an invisible curtain separating you from the rest of the world. You've had a constant feeling of being watched, as if there were attentive eyes on every step you take, waiting for a mistake, a slip, a failure that never happens. These are not random sensations. They are the echoes of a protection that operates on a level your physical senses are only beginning to pick up. The envy that was cast against you found no dwelling place because the spot where it was supposed to land was already occupied by an authority you did not build, but received. Your fingers typing those 3 numbers represent your agreement with the protection that is already over your life. It is the acknowledgement that although their intention was heavy, your foundation is solid. Type 888 and then come right back to me. The pattern is ancient, and to those without spiritual eyes, it looks like an endless sequence of injustices. People tried to slow your walk because they saw in you something they cannot possess. They didn't just want to stop what you do, they wanted to invalidate who you are. They used the system, they used public opinion, they used silence and whispers, but they forgot one fundamental variable. You are not walking on your own. When their plan collapsed in front of everyone, it wasn't because you fought better or because you were more cunning. It was because the ground beneath your feet was prepared long before any of those people ever crossed your path. The attempt to destroy was the catalyst that forced your truth to rise to the surface. They thought they were burying a seed, not knowing that you were actually a grain that only needed the pressure of the soil to find its own way back to the light. Every attempt to halt your destiny ironically accelerated the moment of your exposure. They wanted you to disappear, and the side effect is that now you are impossible to ignore. Do you realize that the sabotage was the biggest miscalculation they could have made? What was supposed to be your end became the platform for your rise. And this is only the beginning of the revelation of why the game turned so suddenly in your favor. You need to understand that the seed does not die when it is covered by earth. It only waits for the moment when the weight of the soil becomes its own force of germination. All this time you felt the suffocation, the pressure, and the isolation. But what you called a desert was actually a nursery of nourishment. The soil they tried to use to bury you, to keep you from being seen, was the same soil that held the nutrients needed for your expansion. While they planned your oblivion, the earth was protecting you, hiding your root so it could strengthen without the interference of those who would not understand your growth. You were not being discarded. You were being preserved in a low-visibility environment so that when the time for your awakening came, your structure would be unshakable. The pain of betrayal that you carried, that weight that sometimes seemed to want to break your chest, was not sent to destroy you. It was actually the furnace where the metal of your authority was forged. What they did against you, the way they acted behind your back, the words they tried to use to stain your name, all of it served as the hammer blows that remove impurities from steel. That specific pain, that disappointment you still remember clearly, has now become the armor that sustains your purpose. You are not the same person you were before that trial, and that is not a loss. It is a gain of substance. The armor you wear today is not made of pride, but of a truth that was tested by fire and remained intact. The authority you radiate today, that silence you carry with such firmness, comes precisely from having crossed the night without becoming part of the darkness. They thought that by wounding you, they would diminish your reach, but they forgot that a well-treated wound becomes a scar of honor, and it is through that honor that your voice now finds a new volume in the world. Let this acknowledgement seal where it has just touched. The act of typing those 3 words makes the witness that you are permanent in your own record. Type, and then come right back to me. Take a deep breath now, because what comes next is the natural outcome of this revelation, the moment of the sun, the moment when the light of your truth exposes everything that was done in the shadows, has already arrived. For a long time, you lived under the suspicion that there was a conspiracy around you, that something was being plotted while you kept your focus on your work and your integrity. You felt the discomfort, that sense that the atmosphere shifted when you entered the room, and now you finally understand why. It wasn't paranoia, it was your perception picking up on their unease in the face of your light. When sunlight hits the horizon, shadows have nowhere to flee. They are revealed for exactly what they are, without you needing to fight them directly. You didn't have to raise your voice to expose their lie. You only had to keep being who you are, maintaining your routine, your character, and your faith. And the very presence of your truth made their hiding place impossible. Their failure was public because your truth was inevitable. They tripped over their own trap because they were trying to build a story about you that never matched the reality of your soul. What they did in the shadows, away from sight, is being brought to the center of the arena, not by your vengeance, but by the simple, pure exposure that occurs when light meets an opaque object. If something in this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, let your gesture of approval be your wordless amen. Not as a number for the statistics, not as an engagement metric, but as a silent agreement between us that what was named here was named with precision. It is an agreement that the protection over you is real and that your trajectory, though marked by challenges, was never out of reach of that force that guides each of your steps. Feel the weight of that recognition now. Feel how the simple fact that all of this has been put into words lifts a burden from your shoulders. You no longer have to carry the weight of explaining yourself, of justifying yourself, or of trying to convince those who chose not to see your essence. The truth about who you are does not need their permission to exist. It simply is. And now, with the clarity of this new horizon opening before you, you realize that your only task is not to fight the ghosts of the past, but to walk in the freedom of what you have just acknowledged. What they tried to use to imprison you was actually what defined the boundaries of your new field of operation. You are in a privileged position of observation, where what was once a source of anguish is now your greatest teacher. The lesson you took from this chapter is the key that opens the door to the next. And that next cycle, the one you are about to inhabit, is built on the rock of your newly discovered stability. Don't rush out of this state of reflection. Let each word settle. Let this new perception become the lens through which you see every interaction, every obstacle, and every opportunity from now on. You are no longer the victim of an obscure plan, but the protagonist of a narrative designed for your own elevation. What they called defeat was actually your baptism into the level of authority you were always destined to wield. Watch with serenity how the landscape around you begins to change, not because you forced a shift, but because your frequency changed, and the world around you is simply responding to the new vibration you emit. You are ready for what comes next, because the foundation is already laid and the protection has already been confirmed. Every step you take from here on out will be grounded in this new awareness, an awareness that is no longer shaken by external noise, because you have understood that the silence of your own soul is where your greatest strength resides. There is someone in your life who needs to hear these words today. That person who has been working much harder than everyone around them, but who sees the doors remain closed, as if there were an invisible barrier between them and the destiny that belongs to them. Think of that someone who is silently resilient, someone who carries a wisdom that no one in the room seems to understand, someone whose face appeared clearly in your mind as I spoke about the end of sabotages and the victory over what was hidden. Don't keep this to yourself. Send this message to that person, not as a casual recommendation, not as a piece of content to pass the time, but as a necessary delivery. Send it as an act of care, a form of silent ministry, just as this revelation was delivered to you today by an appointment that goes far beyond our human choices. They need to know that what was attempted against them failed, and that the protection surrounding them is greater than any conspiracy plotted in the shadows. Now, before we close this cycle of acknowledgement, it is necessary that you put the period at the end of your own story in this journey. Don't do it as a wish. Don't do it as a distant hope, but as a solemn confirmation. The agreement that formed between the higher plan and your attentive listening in these minutes is a covenant of authority that you will begin to live from this exact moment. Write this calmly, feeling the vibration of each letter, allowing your consciousness to adjust to the reality of this identity. Let your fingers do what your spirit is already doing in silence. This declaration is your final seal over all the confusion they tried to plant in your mind. You are the chosen one. You are the committed one. You are the commissioned one. You are the sent one. Every challenge you faced served to sharpen your perception and strengthen your backbone, preparing you for a level of existence where sabotage has no place to anchor. You have understood that your authority does not come from the approval of men, but from the righteousness with which you walked, even when the world seemed to conspire against your advancement. Your commitment to the truth made you unshakable, and your calling now blossoms where there was once only the desert of waiting. The stillness that now dwells in your chest is the proof that the storm has passed. You no longer need to look back to see what they tried to do, because what lies ahead is vast, clear, and sovereign. Your vision is restored, your purpose is aligned, your protection is guaranteed. Keep your eyes fixed on what is true. Keep your heart open to what is eternal, and walk with the certainty of someone who has finally understood their place in the order of things. What has been revealed cannot be undone. What has been healed will not return to a state of wound. Your journey now is one of expansion, of light, and of a peace that makes no sense to those who live on the surface. The path is open. Your calling is now your only direction. Walk with the authority that has been conferred to you. Receive this new season like one who receives a long-awaited gift. The cycle of persecution has ended, and the cycle of your full authority has begun. Everything is, at last, in its rightful place. The truth has prevailed over every shadow. You noticed, didn't you? That moment when silence became louder than any shout of accusation they tried to direct at you. The 11th day of June brought with it a clarity that was not built by human hands, but that blossomed like a flower in arid soil exactly when the scene seemed most hostile. They bet on your fall, on your fragility, and on the belief that you could not withstand the pressure of the isolation they tried to create around you. But what happened before everyone on the great theatre of life was the absolute opposite. Their failure was not an accident. It was an exposure. What they plotted in the shadows to destroy your reputation, to slow your step, and to undermine your confidence, became the stage where the truth could finally be seen without any veil. You have been carrying a weight that does not belong to you, a suit of distrust forged not by your choice, but by the need to survive in the face of people who never understood the brightness you carry. That exhaustion you feel, that tiredness that seems to run through your bones at the end of each day, is not a sign of weakness. It is the irrefutable proof that you have been sustaining a frequency that most people around you cannot even process. They tried to sabotage your path because your light, simply by existing, revealed the shadows they were trying to hide from themselves. It is an ancient dynamic, a pattern that has repeated for ages. The one who carries genuine purpose is always the target of the one who lives by appearances. If you felt the impact of this revelation, if something inside you recognized that the sabotage they tried to apply to your life failed miserably in the greater scheme of things, I ask you to do something now. The number 888 carries the vibration of infinity, the symbol of balance and manifestation that overflows beyond earthly limitations. By doing this, you are not just writing numbers. You are declaring your protection against any envy or attempt at interruption, sealing your energy in a field that nothing low-level can penetrate. Type 888. Feel that frequency spread throughout your entire being, and then come back to me, because we still need to go deeper into what this public failure of your opponents means for your new cycle. The pattern you faced is what we call the test of hidden authority. People who tried to slow your walk did not act out of personal disagreement. They acted out of fear. The fear they feel of what you represent is what moved them to try to tear down what they thought was only a human construction. They did not understand that you are, in fact, a seed. And when they try to bury a living seed, what they do not realize is that they are not throwing you into the dark to die. They are placing you where nourishment happens. The soil they tried to use to suffocate you was actually the fertilizer that allowed your roots to deepen, creating a foundation that is now unshakable. Look at the metaphor of the tree in winter. The leaves fall, the cold seems like it will freeze everything, and those who look from the outside think that life is gone. But what is happening there, under the earth, is the most intense work of expansion that nature can offer. You went through your winter. You felt the loneliness of isolation, the pain of seeing who you considered an ally become the architect of their own fall through betrayal. But that pain, as sharp as it was the hammer that broke the shells that limited your growth. The betrayal they tried to use to destroy you was the tool the universe used to free you from connections that were actually draining your life force. Let this declaration of presence officialize that you have finally occupied the place that has always been yours. The act of typing those 3 words makes your acknowledgement a permanent mark on the record of your own story. Type, feel the solidity of your own voice, and come right back to me. The sun that now rises on your journey is a sun that does not set with the opinions of others. When the light of your truth exposes what was done in the shadows, the result is almost always the same. Those who built their castle on lies begin to see the pillars give way, and you who once felt vulnerable now understand that your protection is absolute. Where there was once doubt, now there is the stillness of one who knows that justice is not something you need to pursue. It is something you simply watch happen while keeping your focus on your mission. If what I have just described resonated as a reminder of what your spirit already knows, let your like be your wordless amen. Not as a numerical record, but as a deep agreement with the truth that has been revealed here, a silent, sacred acknowledgement that the game has turned in your favor. There is someone now in your circle of acquaintance, or perhaps somewhere you frequent, whose face came to your mind as I spoke. Someone you know has been working hard. Someone who has kept their head high while the envy of others tries to undermine their ground. Someone who is quietly waiting for a confirmation that everything they faced was not in vain. Not as a common suggestion, but as a necessary delivery. They need to hear that the sabotage that was attempted against them has also expired, and that the authority conferred to them is greater than any attempt at defamation. Before we close this part of our conversation, I need you to take command of what is yours. It is not a hope. It is not a wish for the future. It is the confirmation of the contract that was signed between your soul and the purpose you accepted to live. Type slowly. Feel each letter, each word, as if you were engraving it into the structure of your own being, because it is from this declaration that you will walk from now on. The time to hide or to explain yourself to those who lack the capacity to understand your essence has come to an end. Now you live from the authority of one who has understood that the failure of others was, in fact, the sign that your walk was being protected all along. You are not merely surviving a cycle of attacks, you are being refined by it. What people call persecution, the universe calls elite training. The person who swore to destroy your name, who spread the poison of doubt and tried to destabilize your ground, has just tripped over their own arrogance. Their public failure was no accident. It was the revelation that your path is protected by an authority that does not require human permission. When someone tries to bring down a chosen one, that person ends up, without meaning to, exposing their own rot for everyone to see. It is a spectacle of unmasking that you did not have to orchestrate, because truth has the weight of a rock and the clarity of a crystal. Feel the weight of this revelation now. What once seemed like a real threat to your purpose is now nothing more than a forgettable footnote in the story of your rise. You realize, perhaps for the first time, that the strength keeping you standing is not your own, but the steadiness of a mission that cannot be interrupted by petty jealousies. Those who spent time and energy trying to plot your end now watch, stunned, as you flourish. They expected you to react with desperation, to jump into the game of defense and justification, but you remained silent. And it is precisely in that silence that your greatest strength lies. The sabotage they tried to apply against your life was only the fuel that launched you into a level they can no longer reach. There is no longer any need to look back, because what is behind you is your past. You now walk with the lightness of someone who knows that their name is being kept safe where slander can never touch it. Let the dust settle. Watch how life takes care of putting every piece in its rightful place. You do not need revenge. You do not need to explain yourself, and you do not need to justify yourself. Life itself takes care of the justice that your heart, in moments of pain, once wished for. Now, you understand that every door they tried to slam in your face was actually a warning not to enter where there was no growth. You are being led by a steady hand in a direction that demands courage, but guarantees the absolute victory of those who stayed true to their own essence. The peace you feel now is not a temporary truce. It is your new state of being. Your fingers typing these 3 numbers are your spirit saying yes to the justice that has just revealed itself. It is the seal that you no longer accept the enemy's narrative. Type 888. Then come back here for what we have to conclude. You know what you went through was not an isolated attack. It was a test of alignment. The person who tried to sabotage your path did not understand that, in trying to bury you, they were only planting you in richer soil. You are like a seed that, under the pressure of the earth's weight, found the strength to break through the shell and reach for the light. The envy of others will always be a disguised recognition of the light you carry. even when you yourself could not yet see that light. Their plan collapsed because the foundation was made of sand and empty intentions, while your building, even if quiet and slow, was built on the rock of truth and patience. Let this declaration mark your territory. Your presence here, in this very second, is proof that you were not consumed by the fire, but purified by it. Type "I am here" and come back to me. Let your light be your wordless amen, not as a marker but as a gesture of spiritual agreement with what has been laid out here. The light of your truth is revealing everything that was planned in the shadows. The one who rose up against you has no power over what is sealed. It is sealed.